Yeah,
This is straight out of The Office. This is straight out of The Office, the episode where Michael has to approve everyone's costumes. This podcast may contain adult themes.
This podcast is for entertainment purposes only.
The views and opinions in this podcast are expressly our own.
When I get to the workplace, I like to fuck shit up.
Honestly, every time I try to do something fun or exciting, you make it not that way.
Hey, are you tired of toxic workplaces and the negativity that comes with them?
We hear you, and we're here to shake things up. Welcome to Let's Break Up Toxic Workplace Stories, the podcast that's all about breaking up with workplace toxicity.
I'm Nicola, and I'm here with my co-host Gina. Together, we're going to explore real-life experiences of workplace toxicity and offer a sense of encouragement and unity.
That's right. We're tackling the tough topic of negativity in the workplace.
So join us each week as we explore the various forms of toxicity in the workplace. We'll be interviewing guests to share their experiences and offer practical solutions for dealing with workplace toxicity.
Let's Break Up is quickly becoming the go-to source for anyone looking to share and then ditch the drama and help you break up with those toxic workplaces. Thanks for tuning in, and don't forget to like, subscribe, and tell all your friends.
In this week's episode, oh my God, I'm so excited. Have you ever heard of the tall poppy syndrome?
The tall puppy?
Poppy.
Oh, like the flower, poppy.
Yes.
Okay.
A tall poppy.
Let's hear this tall poppy theory.
Okay, so new research shows that almost 90% of women worldwide are belittled and undermined because of their success at work. The tallest poppy. Our groundbreaking study for these people called Women of Influence.
Who did the study? Do we know?
Yeah, Woman of Influence.
Oh, I'm sorry. I didn't put that together yet. A little slow. It's Monday.
That's okay. Opening story, yada, 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 negatively impacts ambitious, high-performing women and what it means for organizations. We heard from more than 4,700 working women from all demographics and professions over 100 countries to determine how their mental health, well-being, engagement, and performance are affected by interactions with clients, colleagues, and leaders surrounding their success and accomplishments. We noted a recurring theme.
Here it is. Here's my meat and potatoes.
Those who had or are experiencing tall poppy syndrome did not know these phenomena had a name. Who is doing the cutting of the tall poppies? Men were reported more likely to undermine women due to the success. How are women in the workplace being cut down? 77% of women downplay their achievements. 72% of women feel left out or ignored. 68% of them dismiss their achievement.
Right. So I feel like it's exactly what Dr. Amber was saying. Like, while she just focused on women, and I would love them to do the tall poppy seed, like the tall poppy plant. No, like women cutting women down, because they said men.
Yeah.
Because that would be like Dr. Amber's jam. Like, I'm sure women who were either same level or higher level, but noticed someone who was like a star would even subconsciously try to tall poppy.
But how bizarre is that though, that because I know that tall poppy is like a massive thing here in New Zealand. Like, you have to downplay any success you have because you can't be cooler than anyone else. How ridiculous is that though? Like, I want to be able to celebrate when you win an award or when you do something cool. Like, why are we doing this to people, especially women? Why are we doing this?
I don't know. I mean, our episode with Dr. Amber, she went into the reasons why, like societal culture, like the different pressures, learning microaggressions early in your childhood, like tons of different things, and like the inherent need to compare yourself to other women. I don't know if men have that as much as women. I think they have it, but not nearly to the degree that women have it. And
but
like,
I wonder if that comparison plays a part then when you're in the workplace and men are more likely to cut you down because that comparison is then, hey, we're at the same level in an organization. You can't be better than me because I'm a man.
It's probably even more subconscious than that. It's probably like, she probably doesn't, she's not as good at her job as me because I'm a man and men are just superior. Like, I feel like it's the old script, the old tape being played.
I once did something very disruptive at a workplace that I worked at. And
Okay,
I was actually I was proud of my move. I did like a solid, sly move.
All right, let's hear it.
We had been talking about period poverty, and
Okay.
I was working at a tertiary institution, so like a university style environment.
Okay.
And the statistics were that currently, as it stood, 60% at the time, 60% of girls would miss university classes because of period poverty.
That's a lot.
That's a lot of people missing school because you're on your period, because they didn't have access to tampons or pads or whatever they needed, right?
Yeah.
So at the time, I was the youngest senior leadership team member by 25 years.
Wow.
And I was like, okay, I need to make an impact, but one that is like, I need to be cheeky enough. I need to like kind of ride the blade of glory.
Yeah.
So I got into this meeting. I did my normal boring spiel of, and thank you for coming to my meeting. And here's my 47 slides on reporting, boring. And then I had one slide that was red. And I asked all the women to stand up, and I counted them out. I divided them up into 60%. And I said, for the rest of this entire meeting, these women cannot re-enter the meeting room.
And what happened?
And they were like, what? I was like, yeah, can't come back into the meeting. And then once they'd left the meeting, I went on to say, those are valuable opinions that we've just lost in this meeting. And that is exactly what's happening every month for some of these girls that cannot come to school.
And so did they start giving free stuff out?
Yeah, I think we were one of the first universities that started providing free menstrual products.
That's awesome.
Yeah, just, go grab some.
Sometimes people need like a visual.
Yeah,
like an in-hand visual.
And it was quite impactful because a lot of people came up to me afterwards and said, oh, that was a really impactful presentation. And I was like, I didn't even give a presentation, babe.
I think
there was no presentation here.
I think
it was just me being a smart ass.
Yeah, I mean, it was a good way to demonstrate it. I mean, I think my biggest impact was getting people not to like me, which is no impact at all. Wow. And I didn't even mean to do that. I think people just
copy much.
I don't know. People say that my voice is condescending, and I don't mean it to be, but it's just my voice.
You know what? I've listened to our voices more than I would like.
Oh my God. If I ever have to hear you again, for the love of God. No.
Sweet baby Jesus. I'm so sick of my own voice. Like, I'm sick of your voice. I'm sick of my voice. I'm sick of everybody's voice. Like, just shut up. So I actually think my voice is more condescending than your voice.
Do you think we just suffer from like faux condescending voice?
Maybe, because I was giving you a compliment the other day and I sounded like a total cunt. I was like, and you're doing such a good job, buddy. And I'm like, who the fuck is saying that? Like, I'm thinking, like, I'm listening back to me and I'm like,
I'm like crying about nonsense.
And I'm like, but I'm giving you a compliment. It sounds like I'm not even giving you a compliment. It sounds like I'm being a dick. I was like, wow, babe, reflection.
I don't know. I mean, I've been, accused of being condescending before when I know, like, people know when I'm condescending, like it's a show, like it's an event, I sell tickets and people know. I'd be like, oh, is that what you really think? Are you sure you're going to stick with that? Because, and then I'll go on to explain why they're fucking wrong. But my regular voice is just like this. And so many people in my life, and I've like looked at myself, I've been like, is my voice condescending? Like, I've tried to speak
slower. When you're targeted, you can be condescending. But for your normal voice, no, my normal voice is condescending. I'm just an asshole, apparently.
Well, I hear you. I feel like we just have fake condescending voices without wanting them.
Maybe it's like resting bitch face, but resting.
That's what I'm saying.
condescension.
I think it is.
Resting
I do.
condescending voice.
Yes. So today we are going to be speaking with Danielle Lord. Okay, that's what I thought. So Dr. Lord. I love that.
I would hope so.
Oh, good morning.
Good morning, Danielle. How are you?
Doing well. How are you?
Danielle, why don't you introduce yourself? Who are you?
Right.
What do you do? What are you, if you have credentials, give us your credentials.
Well,
Give us a little.
We just spoke about how cool it is to call you Dr. Lord. Like, I feel like that's a fun time.
That's so cool.
Well, please call me Danielle. So welcome to be here. Thanks for having me, Nicola and Gina. It's always fun to talk about all things leadership and just the depth and breadth of everything and in the scope of what happens in organizations. So as you mentioned, my name is Dr. Danielle Lord. Again, please call me Danielle. I have a Ph.D. in leadership theory, and I have spent my 30-year career working in organizations really to help organizations eradicate pain, helping leaders understand the important role that they have, reducing the pain and the frustration that sometimes comes with the exact types of things that you're talking about in terms of the toxic workforce. And it's a real thing, it exists, and it's really time we acknowledge it and say, it really does, it's out there, and we can do better.
I think that's basically the main point of our podcast is like, let's talk about it. Like, let's be open about it. We want to remove the stigma of feeling, bullied and like standing out for bad reasons, so can you explain how you got into this? Like, did you come from a toxic workplace? What exactly happened to get you to go down this path?
Oh, I have certainly had my share of being in toxic work environments, and I think prior to that, even late in my college, my uni years of bachelor's, I spent time in the Soviet Union. Or what was the Soviet Union. It was on its own dying throes. But I saw a lot of just real cruelty. And I thought, boy, as humans, why are we treating each other so terribly? People drug out of bus chairs from, little girls, 9-year-old girls grabbed by the back of their ponytail and dragged out of bus seats so somebody else could sit down. Ambulance drivers made a university student really injured foot walk to the ambulance on the streets of Moscow, having to step over a deceased human. Those are things, I think those things really impacted me at a pretty early age to really adopt and embrace the personal value of compassion in my own life. And I think that has carried through. This notion of compassion has really carried through into the work that I do from an organizational development perspective, helping leaders understand that there's a better way, there's a different way. We don't have to have pain, helping employees understand there can be a better way. Let's work through some of the pain and the dysfunction. But I hate to put that onus on the team members or the employees, because they're oftentimes plunked down into a culture in which they have no capacity to control that culture. And that responsibility really lies with the leaders to own it and say, yeah, it exists, and what's my role in it? And my role really is to make sure that we have a work environment that supports and sustains the fullness that each human can bring into the organization, because that's ultimately how the organization is going to meet their goals.
Well, I'm really curious to know. So you've kind of had this, I want to say, almost traumatic experience, because it sounds like it was not a fun time, and it's given you this insight into compassion and empathy. Is that something that you notice that maybe leaders are lacking in 2023? Is that compassion and empathy?
Very much so. I really do believe that we are. Oh gosh, I could really speak on this, so I don't know how much far you want me to go down the rabbit hole. But the quick answer is yes, worse over the past few years because of the trauma that collectively worldwide we have all been through with the COVID and the lockdowns and the fear and everything else that's occurred within the last couple of years. So I think that trauma is impacting, and we need to now embrace more and more compassion. But that said, it's my contention that we've been operating from a place of management really since about the feudal era, when the feudal manner was survival. And you were born into one of two stations in life. You had through your nobility connection and your birthright, or you were a have-not, and meaning that all the have-nots really worked to sustain the manor. And because there was no hope or intention or even any real expectation that you would be promoted into anything other than a serf, there was no need for competition. There was no need to stand out. There was no need to develop and enhance your own skills, et cetera. So it was very much command and control. Do this because I am telling you to do it. And that's how the entire manor existed. And the manor existed in order for the survival of everyone, right? So we've kind of functioned this way for about 800 years. Now, we continued to function this way even as the manors started to shut down in the early part of the 20th century. And we moved more into the industrial age, the Industrial Revolution, where we had people they were called great men at the time, the great man theory, and they spent probably the equivalent in today's dollar, millions of dollars in infrastructure and semi-automated equipment. Well, the investment was in the equipment, right? The investment wasn't in the people. And the people were just there to run the equipment. And if someone got injured, there was a line of people waiting outside the door. So we continued to operate that way, even as the doors of our organizations open. So we didn't even really know that there was a different way or the degree of influence that people had in this work until the 1920s, when we started to do a series of psychological studies. And it wasn't even until the 1960s when we realized it's all about the people, right? It's not about the equipment. Yeah. It's about the people. It's about the relationships, the compassion, the empathy that we bring into it. And that marriage between the relationship and the productivity actually enhances the productivity and not the other way around, which is kind of that backward mindset of where we have a lot of people right now is, you're here to work, you're here to do your job. I don't have to be nice to you, right? We can set up this culture and operate in this place of fear and we'll get more done. This is the exact opposite of what we need. So yes, I believe we are really operating in a compassion deficit.
So tell us a little bit, let's kind of get into Gina's favorite thing, the meat and potatoes. How I've not made that into an Instagram post, Lord only.
I don't know. I don't know. You made everything else you possibly could into an Instagram post.
Oh, you haven't even seen my battle axe post yet. Thank you.
What?
You haven't even seen my battle axe post yet.
Oh my God, I'm so excited. Danielle, I called Nicola a battle axe once and she was like, you know what? I'll take it. It's not bad.
Boss bitch right over here. What I'm curious to know, Danielle, is tell us a little bit about some of the really toxic workplaces that you've blended yourself into, that either you've had to kind of look into changing the culture or you were just a unwilling participant of the journey of destruction.
Yeah, I think the first, my first kind of foray into this as an unwilling participant was I was just finishing up my master's degree and I had been in healthcare for a number of years. And boy, talk about a toxic environment. Healthcare is full of it. But I had been working in nursing homes and long-term care, and then went into more of a consulting role within an organization that was a startup company. So that was my kind of foray into my own
see already 3 red flags, Danielle. Startup, being a consultant, and small. But yes, carry on.
Yeah, great call out on those. Startup for sure. So yeah, of course, you get this cool title of consultant, and I was still pretty young. But the first red flag, so this particular individual, he was kind of a mean guy. Great guy when you meet him, but at the organizational level as the president, there were definitely some red flags that I should have picked up on pretty early on. The first one being that his favorite thing to do for new hires was to talk about how much he loved Halloween and that he really required everyone to get dressed up, and they'd have a big party and, you know, cake and ice cream and all those fun things that you do at Halloween. And there were prizes for the best costume. And then he'd let some poor new hire show up all jazzed up and dressed up and become the laughing stock of the office for the day. So big red flag, right?
Wait, so nobody actually did get dressed up?
No, it was all a joke. Yeah,
Right.
joke
Why?
on the person.
Why?
Why though? Like, I don't like you. That's why even like spend that energy on this
And
elaborate
I'm
joke?
like, you go new hire, you dress up, babe. Good job.
Yeah.
This is straight out of The Office. This is straight out of The Office, the episode where Michael has to approve everyone's costumes. This is straight out of fucking, like, I swear to God. He's like, no, we already have 2 nurses. You can't be a nurse.
Naughty nurse.
Yeah.
That was a great episode.
But yeah, that was his favorite thing to do for new hires. And talk about setting up a culture of cruelty. And the joke's on you, and it doesn't matter what you do. It's okay to be cruel and to be a jerk.
It really isn't, because
no, I mean, obviously it's not, but that's a great example of how he set up the employees to be in fear. Like, is everything a joke? Oh my God, what's happening? Like, people are going to start second guessing themselves straight off the bat, you know?
That's so horrible.
It's so horrible. Did he try to do that with you, Danielle? Did you come dressed up?
He didn't. I had heard about it prior to, so I think I had started in about April. And it wasn't until a gal named Leslie, who had worked for him for quite a while, had told everyone about it. And so right there now, because the leader has said, isn't this fun? This is fun and games. Now every employee says it's okay to behave this way. Right. So yeah,
because you've set a precedent of being
a precedent.
This is
so
amazing.
Now, before we get into your second toxic workplace, what would you have done differently in this one, knowing what you know now? Like, you know, having a PhD.
Yeah, how would you have broken the cycle? Wow.
You're right.
I think it's stroke time. Breaking the cycle.
So what would you have done now, knowing what you know, having your PhD, being a little more seasoned? What do you think you could have done differently, or could you have had a conversation with him?
I think certainly having a crucial conversation, heart to heart, would certainly be something that you would want to do, provide some coaching. The problem with that is, and this is where leadership development gets really tricky, is I, as a leader, have to be able to say, oh, wow, I didn't realize I've been a jackass for 20 years, right?
And most people are not willing to do that.
Most people are not willing to confront those demons. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
So what do you do when you are up against someone who's like, this behavior is totally fine? Do you like refer them out to therapy for early childhood trauma or something? Like, what do you do?
Oh, what was it in Stan's conversation where her excuse for being a shitty leader was because she had her childhood trauma?
Yeah,
she didn't feel loved when she was a child.
She wasn't loved as a child.
Wow. Join the club, lady.
And if you can't have the conversation with them at that kind of heart level, right, to say, what you're doing is causing trauma, causing fear, setting up precedents for your entire organization to function as in a bullying, toxic manner. Start to bring some data, right? What's going to happen? Usually there's great research that was done about 1912.
Oh, wow. What research is being done in the 1912? Well, a lot.
About toxic workplaces.
On toxic workplaces.
Yeah, that didn't exist then. So 2012, Cuddy, Fisk, and Glick, and they looked at on a quadrant of warmth and competence. So if you don't have any warmth, if you can't demonstrate that compassion or that empathy, and you fall below a certain level, what will happen is employees will become disengaged, and they actually can begin to passive sabotage or active sabotage. And I've certainly seen plenty of both. But just that subtlety of, I'm going to clock in 10 minutes early every day, and that will give me a half an hour of overtime or whatever the case is. So we can start to build a case. If you don't want to see it, if I can't tell you, you need to change, I can begin to bring you some data. And so what does that data look like? Data points that are inhibiting your organization from meeting their strategic goals. And or aren't you after trying to grow your own organization? So turnover data, all kinds of ways that you can get that data. But sometimes you have to know the individual well enough to say, okay, are they going to be moved by a compelling story, or am I going to need to bring them some data?
Yeah.
So,
and that's,
I think
tough,
that's smart. Like, because science doesn't lie. That's why data is so nice, because you can't refute it. So what happens though where Nicola and I met, like they truly thought that they were being supportive and creating a culture of mental health and well-being, when it couldn't have been further from the truth. Yeah, like that was not the reality I lived in. It certainly wasn't the reality Nicola lived in. I think other people might think differently. Again, we had the most experience out of everyone, including the CEO and owner. We had the most, corporate experiences in our field. So that might have made us slightly different. But what do you do when you can see as a consultant or as someone looking, from the outside into a company where the upper management C-level suite is really awful, but they think the opposite. They think they're creating this wonderful environment for their employees to be in. Like, I don't know if the guy with the Halloween prank, that he would have thought, yes, this is a wonderful environment to work in. He probably wanted people to be fearful of him. Right. So
possible.
In our case, these people, I believe, genuinely thought they were like creating a wonderful working situation for all of their employees.
Yeah, I agree. I think in their minds, they had created this, or have created this environment where they have made people believe that, well-being is at the forefront and yada, yada, yada. But in reality, those people, unfortunately, are still drinking the Kool-Aid. And it's like, no, actually, you've created a really toxic working environment that is not sustainable. And you're just not getting in the people that you need to make your business thrive.
So what would you do in that situation, Danielle?
Yeah, that's the biggest challenge, right? Is that we have these leaders who are in the mindset of, all right, I've gotten to this point, so I must be infallible, right? There's that piece is getting people to move past their own ego, overcoming deeply held beliefs. And again, those things create a lot of cognitive dissonance. So they require time to overcome. So all you can really do is begin to provide them with the facts, the data, and the details. Ask them to have some serious sit-down conversations about it, and provide, again, more data, focus groups, employee engagement scores, really some deep, intense listening. But it's a challenge. It's a challenge in most organizations. Leaders, formal leaders, right? Because we all lead, we all have the capacity to lead, but until we get those formal leaders to really understand conversations, that there is pain in organizations, and there's a different way, a better way to be doing things, I don't know that we can just broad brush it with a quick fix. And that's where we're at right now. I think in a lot of organizations we're up against these challenges.
What could we have done differently? Like as employees, like we were all at management level. So it was the COO, CEO, and then the leaders of the team. So like Nicola and I were, head of a department, basically. We were the department head. So we were just below C-suite. What could we have done differently? Like we questioned some things with some changes, and I questioned things why they were doing things a certain way that would have been beneficial for them to stop doing. But of course they didn't like what we had to say. So what do you think we could have done differently?
Can we just pause here for a second and remind people that if this podcast is something you enjoy, we would love to hear from you.
You can find us on Instagram, LinkedIn, and YouTube at Let's Break Up Toxic Workplace Stories.
Sharing and subscribing really helps us feel validated.
Ripping everything apart and starting over, basically.
Which is what I think we tried to do.
Okay, yeah. Yeah. So that getting down to those fundamental brass tacks, sitting down with everyone on your team, right? And having those really deep, intense conversations. That's something that's really missing in a lot of organizations. We tend to get on this, oh, look at, I got these deadlines I need to meet, so I'm not going to spend any time with the team members, right? So trying to sit down and establishing those relationships within your team. Because once we have those relationships, it's difficult to, most normal, healthy people, right, don't want to badmouth someone that we've become friends with, right? We really want to do everything we can to establish and maintain the friendship. So establishing some core values in and amongst
that
team.
that gives me fucking the heebie-jeebies. The words core values, it gives me
why?
PTSD.
Well,
Because-
let's unpack this. So, okay, I think when you're in a mature organization, and by mature, I mean experienced individuals in an organization, I think when you're developing and creating core values, the opportunity to make really meaningful, really insightful core values is paramount. And you need some kind of like the baseline of everybody's going to do this. However, when you are in a startup and you have only got inexperienced people, and if you have those people creating your core values, now you've got a suite of core values that are so insipid and so childish,
and
you
actually make no
cannot
sense.
run a business from these core values. And we joke about it. We call them the Dr. Seussiisms, because it was just like, oh, the
It's
place
like, did you
you'll go.
eat your green eggs and ham every day?
And it's like, these make no logical sense.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's a really valid point, that when we talk about what are our core values or our values of our organization, they have to be real values based in something, right? They can't be, like you call them, Dr. Seussisms, right? They have to mean something that you can attach behavior to and measure behavior. So I can say, wow, Nicola and Gina consistently meet the values of the organization. And because of that, they're now our positive deviants that we want to be constantly looking to how things should be done in a manner that's going to get us to the objectives of our organization. So finding those positive is really one thing that you can do to help shift the culture, because now suddenly all the eyes are going to be on you. Wow, what is it that Nicola and Gina are doing? Because they're hitting all their marks. Everybody else over here will kind of floundering, trying to figure things out. So how do we look to the two of you now to say, what is it that you're doing? We want more of you, right? We want more of the good behavior, because the behavior is driving the performance rather than the performance driving the bad behavior. But so within your team, even if those core values are Dr. Seussisms, as you call them, and there's nothing to really hang your hat on, you as a team can come together and identify what your values are and what behaviors that you want to see within your own team as normalized good behaviors, and begin to work towards those. But culture change is one of the most difficult changes that exists within an organization. And that's why it's so critical that these things get addressed early on in the right way. But again, so many people just don't even understand the significance and the importance of these subtleties within their organization. And suddenly you've got just this toxic shithole. And this is why I tell folks going into leadership roles, particularly when they are coming in and taking over an intact team, is to really spend the time to get to know those people. Not only so you get to know them, but so they get to know you. But most everyone is probably working from what they call the amygdala hijack. Are you familiar with that term, the amygdala hijack?
No, let's hear it. I want to hear all about it. It sounds fancy.
You'll probably know it better as fight or flight.
Oh, yeah.
Okay.
But the amygdala is a little tiny walnut-shaped portion right in the center of your brain. It's your emotional memory center. And so when we get into a place of fear, trauma, stress, we make all of our decisions from that fight or flight basis rather than our frontal cortex, right? So even as I say, get to know everyone, spend time with them, because everyone's still operating from that fight or flight rather than the frontal cortex, it does take time. because you have to get everyone past out of that amygdala hijack and into their executive functioning center, which is in the frontal cortex. So it takes a lot of time to do that, especially when they have been traumatized. And that's what makes this work so hard, right? It's like, wait, how many more times can I be resilient in this, right? Because you're going through the pain and trauma as well. But everything is just continuing to be in a downward spiral and nothing's getting addressed. I had a very similar situation when I went to work for the state, and I'm in the state of Washington. So I was hired as the chief learning officer. And it was like, oh, my dream job, chief learning officer. And walked into one of the most toxic dysfunctional experiences of my life, and only lasted a short time, like not even a year. But there was a very angry woman who thought that she should have had the role. She had been in the role as the acting chief learning officer for a few months and really believed that it was her time to have the role. She'd been with the state for 20 years. She was probably the epitome of biggest narcissist I've ever encountered. She would whip out Kobe's list of 50 trust busters, and she'd go down the list and she'd say, well, number 37. Yeah, you violated trust issue number 37. Like I had any of these, we can't catalog 37 things in our head. We can only hold on to 5 or 3 or 4 or 5 at any, in our best case, our best day. Oh yeah, so she would find every little reason. And she ran that place from that exact state of fear where everyone was afraid to say anything. It took me several months to break through that, of long conversations with people and getting to know them and getting them to the point where they could trust me. And there were some pretty rough moments when she made a couple people cry in the room. And we had to have a serious conversation about it. And that was probably the thing that got me fired, was that I wrote her up for making people cry. As a direct violation of what I said was not acceptable within our team. But at least they knew that they could trust me because I had stood up for them, right? But still, even that took weeks and weeks and weeks of being there and demonstrating showing the right behaviors. So at one point I said to one of my team members, I said, good morning. How are you, Shelley? How's your day going? And she, oh yeah, fine, great. Saw her a second point during the day. And I said, hey, Shelley, how's your day going? Hope it's progressing well. And she stared at me for a few minutes and then she turned and walked away. And she came back, she knocked on my office door about an hour later. And she said, I'm so sorry I behaved like that. She said, but I've been with the state of Washington for 20 years and no manager has ever acknowledged me, let alone twice, let alone not acknowledged me twice in one day, let alone once in one day. So for you to have said hello to me first, twice in one day, she said, didn't even know how to respond to that. And that's the kind of pain and frustration over time that seeps into the culture, right? It's like being in an abusive relationship. If you've ever had an abusive partner or boyfriend, you know how insidious it is. And suddenly you're just as mind fucked as the person that's doing the abuse, right?
Yeah.
And you don't even realize it.
To describe it, like you're mind fucked and you don't even realize it. It's like buying into a cult. Like Nicola and I always say, like, there's a very fine line, I feel like, between toxic workplaces and cult culture. Because you really start getting brainwashed. You think that this is the way it's done. This is the right way. This is normal. Yep. This is normal. Like this level of, non-trust is normal, and always like looking over your shoulder or knowing someone's going to say something about you behind your back or whatever the case is. We kind of went way off there, but we're all
well, I'll finish with the Halloween guy story. So, and I still tell this story to this day, particularly when I'm working with leaders around conflict. But we had a really awful situation that occurred that resulted in the death of one of the patients in one of the nursing homes. And as in small startups, other duties as assigned, right, typically falls to everyone. I was managing our risk portfolio and our insurance portfolio. And so this incident report came across as a huge red flag, patient death. And I wanted to bring it up and it got dismissed at the director's meeting. And so we had a couple other really toxic individuals within this organization as well. But I brought it up at our larger management team meeting, which included the CEO and the CFO, that this is a problem. A woman, somebody's mother, grandmother, auntie, etc., a woman died on our watch. We broke 2 laws. And so far, nobody's been willing to address this. And so now I'm bringing it to the attention. One of the other really toxic gals quickly stood up and proceeded to verbally fillet me on the boardroom table. The CEO pushed his chair back, put his feet up on the table, leaned back in the chair with his hands behind his head, and said, "I love it when the girls fight."
Ew. What is wrong with people?
Someone get the jelly.
Yeah, what's the down count on those pillows?
Yeah, it's a pretty unpleasant experience, and I was not there that much longer.
Did you leave that workplace, or did they ask you to go? How did that work out?
Yeah, they terminated my employment after 9/11. When the economy kind of tanked. So that's how long ago that was. But the memory is still so fresh in my mind. And like I said, I tell this story anytime I teach anything related to conflict, about just that is the absolute opposite of the response you would expect anyone in the team to have, let alone the CEO and the owner of the company.
Wouldn't you have felt like, just playing devil's advocate, like assuming that, assuming you stayed on, right? Like hypothetically you stayed on, how shitty would you have felt about working for that company?
Oh,
You're
yeah.
trying to be like somewhat of a whistleblower, or just like, hey, well, you have to look at this to learn how to do better next time, or whatever. There's a possible lawsuit, and that's how they're acting. Like, how would you even feel? Like, I would feel so gross.
Yeah. Oh, I did. So it was, a blessing that I was let go when I was because of the economy. But it was not a good feeling. Like I said, this was somebody's mother, grandmother, and we were the direct cause of her death. I felt horrible about it. I mean, that's how as you should. Anyone should feel bad about that, right? Not just, oh, it's a person, it's a number, it's happened because she was old, whatever the case is. Yeah, who wants to work for that organization? I think the really important thing to understand as we unpack this topic, particularly for leaders, is that in the event that you have employees who cannot leave the organization, what's happening that you're not aware of, right? So we all think, well, just leave, go find another job. There's plenty of jobs out there, right? Well, there's high exit costs sometimes for people. Some people are working in a really specialized field, and there's not a lot of opportunity for them, right? There's very limited jobs in my field, which is why I started my own business. But maybe it's 3 minutes from my house, and I don't have a car. I don't want to buy a car. So it's much more convenient for me to walk. Maybe the work is close to my child's school. And so in the event that I'm needed, I can be right there. It's easy for me to pick them up. Maybe I can't, I'm too close to retirement and I can't get vested in another 401k plan soon enough. So there's lots of reasons why exit costs are too high for people to just leave the organization. So, lots of people just check out.
I think a big theme is that when you feel like undervalued, or you're in a workplace that's not really letting you shine, like your productivity goes down. It's just like what you said, like you check out and you just do the bare minimum so that you're like not raising any red flags, or, you're not talking too much. You're not ruffling feathers. That's exactly what happened to me at where Nicola and I met. I just stopped talking.
But it does happen. And it's frustrating.
I brought something. The CEO went around behind my back and spoke to a vendor without letting me know. And then she sent the COO to tell me that had happened. And I was like, why wouldn't she have just CC'd me on the communication? Like, I wouldn't have intervened. Like, if she wants to talk to the vendor, of course, she's welcome to. She owns the company. But when I went back during a review and said, like, that really made me feel really upset, because to me, it's a distrust in my methods that are proven. I can't do my job. She wants to do my job. So it's like, if she wants to do my job, why hire me? If she thinks she can do a better job than me, which historically she has not, why even hire me? And the COO just kind of like glossed over that and just kept going on with the meeting. And I was just like, I was like, she's cutting me off at the knees, you know?
Well, and it tells me that there's a real inability for that individual to have any degree of beneficial conflict too. And conflict isn't fun. I mean, and no one likes to have conflict, but we have to be able to get these things out on the table and address the issue, leave the person behind. It's not about the person, it's about the issue. And once we tackle it from a perspective of the issue, then we can begin to identify where we have barriers and obstacles.
Yeah.
And those are sometimes the more uncomfortable things to unpack, because oftentimes when there are barriers and obstacles, the leaders again have to put up that mirror in front of them and saying, what am I doing creating the barriers or
so what
obstacles
they
or
ended up
inhibiting?
doing,
I
Yeah.
genuinely wonder, like, honestly, I'm so curious to know how people are surviving currently. I would assume that some of them, many of them, have listened to our podcast, and how they are so into the Kool-Aid and so into the fucking cult that they haven't even realized that they need to do something about it, and then just dig their feet in even deeper. Are you guys not actually realizing how toxic the environment is, that you're like digging in deeper?
It's cognitive dissonance. The inability to recognize that there's an alternative outcome or an alternative situation. One, we work really hard to tell ourselves a story, and then we work even harder to convince ourselves that our story is correct. It's called the ladder of inference, meaning that I find something, I see it, and then I will go to great lengths to climb and climb and climb up that ladder to find data, to find evidence, to find stories, to find people to support my own belief system around it. It's probably a lot of things, right? That's just one piece of it. There's the fact that sometimes when you're in the spider's web, you can't find a way out of it. You don't realize how badly you've been, gaslighted, if you will, until you're out of it.
That company in particular, like, really created like a culture of like, you're lucky, like, this is such a cool company, we're doing such cool,
you're
amazing
blessed
things, like,
to be in this environment.
Like,
so that's called Hawthorne effect.
You're lucky to have a seat here, so you should hold on to it.
What did you say? The Hawthorne effect?
Hawthorne effect, meaning that somehow you're part of something bigger, or you yourself have a Hawthorne effect because you have what you consider or perceive to be a high status position. Yeah, I'm part of something that's super cool and super amazing. I'll never get this anywhere else. I don't want anybody to experience what I'm experiencing.
Wait, that's a thing? Wait, tell us more.
I feel like that's like the starting of a cult.
Yeah, you want to be part of something bigger, part of something special? Absolutely. And we all like that, right? We all like that little ego boost. You're part of the club. You're getting this started. That has a real powerful effect on us as humans. Absolutely. I think that's why cults are so attractive to people, is that there's this compelling belief that I'm about to be part of something really, really big. And it's going to be tomorrow. It's tomorrow. Just one more day, just a little bit more time. I can hang on that much longer.
That's what got Nicola, because Nicola was a consumer first. So she already enjoyed this brand. She was basically a customer of theirs. And so when you were offered this position, you were probably like, this is so fucking cool, right?
Yeah.
Because you had already liked
the brand. I kind of moved through the ranks though, right?
You did.
So I started off as a consumer and then said, hey, we can, as your consumer influencer, I think we can do a better job with our influencers, and then kind of went from there and said, hey, we can actually do a better job here, here, and here. Okay, we can do a better job here, here, and here too. And let's keep going. Let's make a better job here. Oh, look how much money I'm making you now that I've fixed these problems.
For me, I had never heard of the company. So I was just like, whatever, I don't get what the whole big hype is. Like, everything that they're doing is steadily and readily available on the market. Like, there's nothing here that's really setting them apart from anyone else, in my opinion. So I didn't have that feeling of I'm doing some where I came in with my ego was, I see how fucked up this situation is and I can fix it.
I can, yeah.
Which I could
no,
have
yeah.
if they let me
Yeah.
if they left me alone to let me do my thing, I absolutely could have fixed it. But
Yeah.
by then I didn't give a shit anymore because they weren't valuing me. They were telling me I was making other people feel stupid.
I was just going to say there have been multiple studies around what people will do when they believe that someone that they hold in high esteem is giving them orders to do. So we've seen it with the Stanford prison experiments. If you're familiar
That's
with
a terrible
Stanford
experiment. I
prison.
hate that
Yes.
so much.
The Milgram experiments. Are you familiar with that
I don't know
one?
that one. Do you know the Stanford experiment though, Gina? Because it's really fucked up.
So the Stanford prison experiments, I think it was in the late 1960s, early 70s at Stanford University. They took a bunch of grad students or students in general and
I know
made
this
some
one, but yeah.
some of them
Yeah.
guards and some of them prisoners. And the guards proceeded to do really awful things to the prisoners based on the commands that they were receiving from kind of the higher up. So the Milgram experiments, even worse, there was someone with a kind of a clicker in their hand and someone telling them, I think the gist of it was, if this individual gets the answer wrong, you can give them a shock. And if they continue to get the answers wrong, give them more shocks. And the person at the other side of the screen was like screaming in agony. And the high status individual was still telling them, no, they got the wrong answer. You got to give them more voltage. And so just over and over and over. So we've seen it at nurses because they say, oh, it's a physician. I'm getting a physician order. I must carry out the physician order. I mean, it's happened time and time and time again, where we see these things occurring with someone that's perceived to be someone in a high status position, giving a command to do something. And high status, right? It's what's your perception of who that individual is? It could be someone in a uniform, an officer. It could be like a physician to a nurse is a high status relationship. So a really charismatic, this is why charisma and leadership has never been or has been really sized because people in very charismatic leaders tend to create kind of their own cult of personality. And it's very easy for them to manipulate people in their teams, their team members,
Nicola,
to manipulate those individuals.
charismatic leader. She said
I
it.
love me a cult. Dr. Lord has confirmed my cultisms for me. Thank you.
There you go.
Yeah. Okay. So before we wrap up, can you tell us and our listeners where we can find you? What are you doing today? What is your mission in life now that you're on the other side? Give us a little synopsis there.
So about a year ago, I went out on my own and have my own small business. I don't know what to call myself quite yet. I'm not quite a consultant because there's some not necessarily great images that get conjured up with consultants. There's
a new movie on Prime called The Consultant, and the preview. I feel like Nicola and I should have a watch party on it because
can that be an entire episode?
Yeah, because
The Consultant is an American black comedy thriller television series created by Tony, based on the novel of the same name by Bentley Little, and starring Christopher Waltz as
that's who it is, Christopher Waltz.
Titular? Anyway, blah 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 blah. The series follows Oh no, this is like an entire episode. The series follows the employees of a mobile gaming company whose leadership is taken over by a sinister consultant played by Waltz. Boom, boom, boom.
Yeah. Is there any more?
It premiered on Amazon Prime.
Okay, whatever. So basically, you see clips of the employees being like, does he even work here?
So do you think it was one of the big four that sent him in? Because I could believe that.
I don't think it matters. I feel like we need to watch it and then review it episode by episode. Yeah. Anyway, Danielle, we went way off course.
That's okay. It's one more reason why I don't want to call myself a consultant.
Right. That was the point. I was like, oh yeah, no, wait.
So yes, I am out on my own, providing organizational development and leadership development to all businesses is what I like to say, really helping leaders understand the value of team members and that there is a better way. We don't have to be, you as organizational owners don't have to be frustrated. Your employees don't have to be stressed or working in fear. We can do something different. So I offer a variety of services. I won't go down the rabbit hole as to what I can do, but you can find my work if you're interested at Archetype Learning Solutions. And that's the name of my website. So as individuals, we are all archetypes. We have our own needs and we have our own city that we should be able to bring into the workplace. And so that's how you can find me. Danielle at archetypelearningsolutions.com is my email address. And yeah, I love doing what I do. I'm very passionate about it. And like I've said before, we can do better. We can do
I
better.
think everyone has a part to play in every situation, in every toxic workplace. And
100%.
I think everyone can do better. I agree with that.
Agreed.
100%. All right. So Danielle, thank you so much. It's been a very interesting conversation. And
thank you.
I think,
all right. Well, thank you so much. Really enjoyed it. And yeah, anytime, reach out.
Thank you. We will do. Thank you so much.
To join you again.
Thank you.
Thank you for joining us today. If you would like to share your story, we would love to hear from you.
Also, leaving a review helps us create more content because it shows us there's an interest in this topic.
For those of our listeners who do better with reading, we have closed caption available on YouTube.
See you next week, same time and same place.